You're listening to Speaking Of by WFSU Public Media. A devastating tragedy struck Florida State University's campus this past Thursday, April 17th. A gunman opened fire near the student union, killing 2 and injuring 6. This episode features a special extended look into the events that day and will provide viewpoints from students who were on campus, a roundtable of WFSU reporters who covered the events, and a conversation with FSU professor and mental health expert Sally Karioth.
Hi, I'm Gina Jordan, a host at WFSU Public Media. And today we are speaking of the FSU shooting and mental health in the community afterward. 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner is accused of taking a gun owned by his stepmother, a Leon County deputy, and using it to kill 2 people and injure 6 near the FSU Student Union 1 week ago today. FSU's campus was closed Friday, then classes resumed Monday with a lot of concessions for students too scared or distraught to return.
We will be flexible and find a way to accommodate you. I promise. Please take care of yourself. If you need time or support, reach out.
I'm joined now by members of the WFSU News team, Assistant News Director Regan McCarthy and reporters Adrian Andrews and Tristan Wood. Welcome.
Hi, Gina.
Hello.
You've all been on campus covering the shooting and the aftermath. Adrian, you went there shortly after the shooting. Tell us about that day.
Yeah, and it's really a hectic day, honestly. And I ran into one student. His name is Craig Jacobson. He's a freshman there. And this is just moments after they got the okay that, they can all leave the Civic Center, go back, to their dorms, wherever. And it's just... It was something, I guess, in the air, right? It was just like they just didn't feel safe, and this is what Craig said.
So I was barricaded in a room, and then there was police knocking everywhere, and we got brought into another room, and then people are really getting manic or I don't know, they're in a craze because of everything going on, and so there's people running for the building, they just start going through the whole building for no reason, just because they heard knocking on doors and stuff.
Yeah, so he's describing all of these things that went place. He was in class during the time, nearby the student union building, and it's just so odd. Just talking with him, you can see sort of that scared look, and he's breathing all heavy. Mm-hmm. And it was just a lot, a lot that day.
Surreal. Yeah. Felt very surreal.
And again, then I had a press conference that same day, right? So, and you have authorities who they're breaking down sort of what they know to that point. And so I sat in that press conference, and they were just breaking it down and just talking about, what is next. And, obviously they're kicking off the investigation and just trying to piece together details behind, the whole shooting and the incident that occurred.
I thought that press conference, I saw it like a lot of people did. It was streamed. And I just remember feeling Police Chief Lawrence Revel, he seemed to really have it together, but I felt like in general people were so shaken. And I especially felt that about FSU's president, Richard McCullough. It's just a shocking, you hear about it, but you don't understand it until it happens to you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Tristan, you went to the vigil the next day that the university held. Tell us about that.
So it happened on Langford Green. It was organized within 24 hours of the shooting. So when I got there, thousands of students were there. Wow. Television cameras from local outlets and national outlets flanked both perimeters, and it was boiling hot outside. The mood was very somber. Everyone was really quiet, leading up to when the event opened, and it opened with FSU President Richard McCullough giving an address and trying to console and comfort all the students, faculty, and staff that were there.
I'm here for you. We're all here for you. Whatever you need, we will deliver to help you. That's what we do. That's what makes Florida State special. So don't forget that. We're a family.
Throughout that vigil, several other FSU officials gave remarks, and one of the ones that was very helpful for myself personally was Carlos Gomez, the director of FSU Counseling and Psychological Services. He talked a little bit about some of the resources that were going to be made available to FSU students, staff, and faculty.
The coming days will be challenging. If there is anything you take with you today, please take the number 644-TALK. If you don't know where to go for assistance and support, please call 644-TALK. We are available 24/7 and will guide you through FSU support services.
Yeah, and actually after, hearing his remarks and also being available at some of the on-campus resources, my girlfriend, her and I went on Sunday to the Askew Student Life Center where they had emotional therapy dogs there. They had FBI and FSU counselors there that are specialized in dealing with trauma and situations like this. So we were both able to get counseling and psychological services there. So, and the number of students that I saw there, just showing up to like pet the dogs and like do stuff was very helpful. But back to the vigil, there were several inflection moments where you could see the crowd start to break down. One of the really big ones is when they did like a group prayer. I was standing right next to where the band was. And when they were reaching like the end point in the prayer, several members of the band started crying profusely. And while that happened, a wave of emotion went over the audience. And then right after that prayer, the band had to perform. So that was the moment for me where you was just looking out at the crowd. The looks on people's faces was just shocking to me.
Yeah. And you talked to a lot of people. I know it was very emotional, and we saw that. That was also live streamed, and just to see literally thousands of people there, lots of people just comforting each other. A lot of these students will be talking about this. They'll have to talk about it for a long time.
Absolutely. Several students I spoke to, this wasn't the first shooting that they had experienced. The FSU senior Mina Kendall, she was in the middle school right next to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in South Florida. When the shooting happened there in 2018, I was a senior in high school when that shooting happened, and I went to Fort Lauderdale High School just like 15, 20 minutes away. So in speaking with her and like kind of talking with her, there was kind of a sense that, we've been here before, and it's kind of made her feel emotionally numb to it happening again.
People are crying around us, and it's like, I've cried all my tears.
I think that was a discussion I heard from a lot of students on FSU's campus as well. A lot of their friends, a lot of people that they know have experienced something like this before at Florida State University. There was the shooting about 10 years ago at the Strozier Library. And I think that feels a little shocking to people that here in our community, we could be going through again within the span of about 10 years, another school shooting. And so I think that is something people are reflecting back on a lot and just thinking about what that means for the world that we live in today, where this is becoming something, not a once in a lifetime tragedy, but something someone could experience more than once in their life, more than once within 10 years.
Yeah. Well, Regan, you talked to a lot of students, too. You've been to campus. You went over the weekend, and you ran into some people who were just walking around trying to get the lay of the land again and get comfortable with it again.
Right. Yeah. In the days following the shooting, I was on campus at Florida State University, and one of the students described the feeling there to me as eerie. And I feel like that was a very apt description. Usually on a typical weekend at Florida State University, those pathways all around the school are bustling. There's a lot of noise and activity. People are out with their blankets and their books studying on Landis Green. This was not the feeling that was there at all in the days following the shooting. It was very quiet, very somber. It felt a lot like it feels when you go to a funeral. People were going to those memorials where students and community members have left flowers, balloons, all in different spots in campus. I heard some people singing hymns. I heard people praying, a lot of crying. I think it was just a very emotional return to campus for people. One student that I talked to is named Olivia Wyszynski, and she had actually been in the student union on the day of the shooting. She heard a fellow student yell out something like, "Call 911." And at first, she's a nursing student, and she thought maybe a medical emergency was happening. And then she realized everyone was running out of the building, and she ran with them. And she says, as she was running out of the building, she was running to her car because she thought maybe that was where she would be safe. And she heard, these shots ringing out as she was running. And so in the days before Monday, as she was preparing to go back to class, her mom and sister came to visit her, and they purposefully spent those days walking around campus so that she could have that experience first back there with them. And this is what she told me about that.
We intentionally did it yesterday, me and my mom, because I didn't want coming to class on Monday by myself to be the first time I came back to campus. So it was really helpful to just be hugged by my mom, just as I experienced all of that again. But we decided to come again today.
And so, Olivia says having that moment where she could sort of go through that emotion again, but having her mom there, having a safe person with her there, gave her a little more courage to feel like she could go back to class on Monday. So the university did reopen on Monday, and there was a lot of concern from students about whether that was too soon, whether that felt like the right time to go back to class. Olivia said for her, it was the right time. She said she doesn't want this event to hold her back.
It was really comforting to know that we were able to kind of go back at our own pace per the university's rules and regulations, but I trust that they're making these decisions very thoroughly and thoughtfully with lots of discussion. And at the same time, I'm just I am a student and I want to finish the semester as strong as possible. Academics are really important to me, and especially being a nurse, I'm really excited to start my career, and I don't want this hard time to set me back just because someone decided to do a bad thing. I still want to be able to persevere and trust that it's going to be okay.
And so I think Olivia's feeling is shared by a lot of people, which is that the students really appreciate the flexibility that the university was giving. Initially, the university had said, hey, we're reopening classes on Monday, let's come back. And a lot of students said, that's too soon for us. We're not ready. And so then the university said, we're going to offer options. And so a lot of students have been able to do classes remotely. Students have had the option to just keep the grade they have, finish the semester, and not even have to come back and do finals. So there have been a lot of options offered to students. Another student who I talked to on campus over the weekend, she was there too, trying to get over that feeling of fear that she feels like is surrounded by the campus now. And she said that she really appreciates that flexibility from the university, but she also understands where other students are coming from. Her name is May Campagna.
I think a lot of people are still a bit nervous to come on campus. They don't want to be put back in a situation where something like that could happen again. And also, like you said, there are a bunch of memorials, so everywhere we look, we're reminded about what happened.
And so for May, I think seeing those memorials, just brings those emotions up, that feeling of a little bit of scariness on campus in place for her.
Yeah.
One thing that May mentioned to me is that she'd really like to see more effort put on safety on campus. And one of the things that she thinks could accomplish that is giving professors training about lockdown drills. She says she's heard a lot of professors during this event weren't really sure what to do.
Certain classes, they have professors who aren't from the United States, so they don't know what to do in an active shooter lockdown. So where the students had to take control over it and barricade the doors themselves, and we wouldn't know what to do if we haven't had those drills, which it says a lot that we have to have those drills. It's very sad that that's the world we live in, but I think those drills could have saved people's lives because they knew what to do.
That's an interesting concept. I know that's one of the things being pushed by student advocates for gun reform. One of the issues is we need more locks on doors, inside locks, and we need active shooter training for our professors. And Adrian, I know you've been covering, there's been several gun protests, gun reform rallies.
Yeah, so they actually, interesting that we mentioned this, they had a press conference just yesterday at the Capitol where FSU students went there and sided with lawmakers and basically urging them to put locks on doors? Can we do anything about the gun laws currently in place? Like, how do we strengthen college campuses to make sure that, this sort of thing doesn't happen? Simon Monteleone, right? He's a freshman. He brought up an interesting point. He mentioned about the fact that some of these doors just do not lock from the inside, right? It says that most of those doors around FSU only open outwards, making like barricades like less effective in those moments, right?
Right.
So here's what he had to say.
I don't ever want to have to enter a classroom in a situation like that again and have to know that the locks inside our doors are not managed by our professors, even in times of school shootings.
Yeah, and another student, Madeline Probst, she went about and said, okay, we have these issues. We know it's here. It's not going anywhere. What can the legislature do, right? So she's asking the state to basically set aside some sort of funding, some money where make sure that, one, these college professors know what to do in these instances, right? Like, what can they take some sort of courses? Is there anything that they can do, right? So they know next time, okay, we need a barricade, we need a lockdown, we need to do something. And she's looking towards the federal level to sort of help out with that, to coordinate some sort of gun violence prevention programs or anything that can help. And she's also asking for safe storage legislation to help keep guns out of the hands of criminals and minors. And obviously this sort of thing, I mean, it's hard to say whether that would have prevented all of this from happening. We know that the suspect, he was 20, he's grown. But here's what she had to say about that as well.
We are asking that the legislature put appropriations towards mental health intervention and advocacy services and appropriations towards these trainings so that they can be provided on all college campuses.
Like I said, they were out there protesting. They were demanding these things from their lawmakers.
Piper Greisel is one of these students. She's been a big advocate for gun reform. She wrote about her experience. She was one of the students barricaded. She's a junior at FSU. Here's a little bit about what she had to say on social media.
I lived in Tallahassee my whole life, having grown up surrounded by canopy roads and love bugs. But I've also grown up surrounded by the threat of bullets. My first lockdown was in elementary school. The school I went to is right next to Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, and so when they were in danger, so were we. It was easier to hide under a desk when I was 10. In 8th grade, I skipped school to attend my first protest at the Capitol. Students from across Florida pleaded for our lawmakers not to let the dying continue. Tomorrow, there's another protest at the Capitol because people are still dying. On Thursday, April 17th, my classmates and I barricaded ourselves in our classroom for 2 hours. I've written about the experience, but I haven't yet talked about what came after. I went to my little brother's talent show, but I didn't see the confetti cannons when they pulled them out, and so my heart stopped when I heard them. The same happened when I heard a car horn on Ocala last night. It was sudden, it was loud, and it was unexpected. I wasn't able to cry until the 1 p.m. TMH press conference. I cried again today, seeing the university's announcement about classes resuming on Monday. My final is in the same room where I was barricaded in. I don't want my semester's work to go to waste, but I don't want to go back there. I don't want to take an incomplete, and I don't want to sit in silence in that room a second time because I don't want to be forced to remember the terror we felt.
So that was FSU student Piper Greisel. She told me that she did choose to end her semester early, which was one of the options, take the grades you have. But she said that she planned to go see the room one last time because that was one of her favorite classes, and she doesn't want that barricade to be her last memory of that room.
Wow.
Now, one of the things that keeps coming up is this whole safe storage issue. So the Leon County Sheriff's Office says they are doing an internal investigation into the use of Deputy Jessica Eichner's gun in the shooting. She's on leave. That was at her request. But the Sheriff's Office told me that, adults can be around guns. They can have guns, and she didn't necessarily need to have it locked up. She could have had it locked up. We just don't know. We'll also keep talking about efforts to get professors training and to maybe get more locks on the doors at FSU. Anything else stand out to you guys?
I think one thing worth mentioning is that today, as we're speaking, actually, there are students who are marching from FSU to the Capitol to, again, rally for some of these reforms that we're talking about right now. And so, like you said, I think those are things we will keep hearing. Students are really trying to use the momentum that maybe this event has created in a way that they think maybe some good could come from it.
I will say, though, there's a lot of calls from these students for further gun control legislation. And of course, after the Parkland shooting, several gun control measures were enacted by the Florida legislature. I think, though, this time around, it's pretty unlikely that a similar gun control package is going to come out of the legislature even after this student advocacy and after this terrible situation, because this is the same legislature where several lawmakers are pushing to roll back those protections that were passed in 2018, 2019. So I just don't really foresee a second bite at the apple of gun control legislation to come out of Florida's legislature this year or even next year.
Yeah.
Right. And I do want to mention, I've heard from students on the other side of the issue too. On the day of the shooting, I got a call from a young man while he was barricaded in his classroom. And he said, I usually, when I'm not on campus, I carry a gun with me, and I'm feeling very helpless right now and very afraid. And I'm wishing that maybe campus carry were allowed and I could have a gun with me right now. It would make me feel a lot safer. And I've heard from other students who say, hey, I don't carry a gun and I don't really want all my classmates carrying a gun.
Mm-hmm.
But if I knew, if I were barricaded in that room and I knew this one responsible student that is in this room with me had a gun, it might have made me feel better. And so, there are arguments on both sides of that issue coming out of this event.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This discussion will continue. WFSU News Team, our Assistant News Director, Regan McCarthy, and reporters Adrian Andrews and Tristan Wood. Thank you all.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Andres Perez is one of the FSU students leading the charge for stricter gun laws. He's a junior majoring in political science, and like the alleged shooter, he's 20 years old. He's also the president of the FSU chapter of Students Demand Action. We spoke this week via Zoom.
My classmates immediately acted. They went ahead, shut off the lights, barricaded the door, hid in the corner. Luckily enough, law enforcement then, of course, swept our building. Throughout that, it was a lot of trauma, a lot of emotion, a lot of gratitude, really, that I was okay and I was safe. But it really was disheartening and really sad. And looking back, I was afraid and I was really fearful of what was going on.
What building were you in when this was happening?
I was in Bellamy, so just around the corner from where the incident transpired.
Well, I'm sorry you went through that. I mean, it sounds terrifying. It was shocking to see all of those law enforcement vehicles, just horrible. So you are the president of Students Demand Action. Tell us what you all are demanding.
For this entire session, myself and, of course, other chapters in the state have been lobbying for Florida lawmakers to pass sensible gun legislation. There was this one bill which aimed to lower the age limit to purchase a firearm from 21 to 18. Now, of course, the reason why the age limit to purchase a firearm in the state of Florida is 21 is because, of course, of the Parkland shooting. And as a result of that, the legislature at the time passed the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Act, which, again, raised the age limit. And so as a result of this tragedy, again, we're urging our lawmakers, we're pressuring them, please don't pass this bill. Secure and safe storage is an important piece from what's coming out as well.
What prompted you to become active in Students Demand Action?
Growing up, I'm 20 years old, so I'm classified as Generation Z. Myself and as well as many folks in my generation have been desensitized and traumatized from this consistent occurrence of mass shootings in our nation. Wanting to be politically active, wanting to make a difference in my community. Last semester, I reached out to a couple good friends working within Students Demand Action, and we just wanted to bring a chapter here to Florida State.
Well, Andres, a common argument is that people do the shooting, not the guns. You'll hear a knife attack, a person does that, not the knife. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think one important piece to also recognize is you don't know who's going to be committing these acts of violence. You don't know when it's going to happen. And so there has to be measures beforehand to prevent such occurrences, whether that be through mental health resources, as well, like mentioned, passing legislation that would have just prevented this outright. So I think that argument, and of course in this context, is very insensitive to how a lot of people have been feeling and what people are really wanting from this.
I want to ask you about the mental health aspects of gun violence for the people who experience this kind of terror. What can you tell us about your own experience and people you know?
Yeah, I mean, just coming days off of what just happened, many people grieve in different ways. Myself, I'm grieving in this way, which is being an advocate and speaking to folks about my story and the change that has to come from it. as well other people are taking the time, they're leaving school, they're heading home, and they're taking much needed time and closure from what's just happened, seeking mental health resources, or just, going to family and friends and just hugging them. It's difficult, it really is. And I think our generation is really championing mental health. So mental health is going to be a really, really huge part in many of our lives, and as well just trying to find a way to heal from all of this.
That was Andres Perez, president of the FSU chapter of Students Demand Action. We spoke this week via Zoom. Also this week, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Sally Karioth. She is an expert on grief, trauma, stress, and compassion fatigue, a well-known and beloved FSU professor.
I'm what is called a certified traumatologist. I work with Green Cross, and we're part of FEMA. And when things happen nationwide and sometimes worldwide, we get activated. And if we can go, those of us that are part of that team, we go if something's happening. So when Green Cross called, of course, I was on site. And Charles Figley, who's the greatest guru of PTSD, etc., started this concept of trauma recovery versus grief because they're really different. I happen to be on his team, but he is really the godfather of recognizing and validating grief and trauma. Trauma is it's so bad you don't want to think about it, and so you stop yourself from thinking about it. And when it comes back to you, it's a nightmare, or it's a flashback, or you're avoiding the area.
How do you define trauma?
Well, the class I'm teaching now, coincidentally, is the trauma class. And in grief work, we expect things to happen, like people get cancer, or there's a car accident, or someone drowns, or you're hit on your bike. And you work your way around that by being able to tell the story, having a good support group. And I explain it to the kids, it's like your grief is a ball in a glass box, and it never leaves the box. And on one side of the box is a pain button, and in the beginning, the ball fills the whole box, and it hits the pain button over and over. But as time passes and you talk about it and your memories turn to joy, and you can, some days things make you laugh and the next day they might make you cry, but you get your mind around the story, and that's normal grief. In trauma, the event is often so horrific that you stop yourself from thinking about it. But your body still, in sympathy with you, would like to do something with this big chunk. And it will wait for you. And so if I ask you to tell me that story, and it may be 10 days later, you tell the story like it happened 10 minutes ago. Nothing has been resolved. It's like when people say, well, time will make it better. There is no greater myth. Time does nothing except pass. Trauma's merciless. And one day, you're going to be standing in Publix in front of the Frosted Flakes that was someone you love's favorite cereal, and you're going to fall to the ground sobbing, because it's going to trigger something in you. You've really got to do the work.
Yeah. So you work with people who have literally been traumatized.
Right. And it's important to note, too, that 90+% of all people don't develop trauma symptoms. That, in fact, most of us have good support, are well adjusted. But if we come from an environment where your life is already profound chaos, the body keeps score. And so if something happens like what happened here on Thursday, it is a flashback to your life, which has been adverse, maladaptive, dysfunctional living up until this moment. So it's just going to pile on, and you're going to respond as if you were 5 years old again. And trauma work becomes really specific to what the people that I get to see have already brought to the party. So if someone actually develops symptoms associated with trauma, there was most likely a bunch of things going on before. For example, there aren't any traumatic events. There are traumatic responses. 9/11 wasn't a traumatic event, but there were millions and millions of traumatic responses. Yeah. And there are still people that when a plane flies over, look up and have a moment of their heart rate increasing.
Yeah. You mentioned that you have had some students staying at your house. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For the last few days, my office has been full of kiddos in the rocking chair on the couch. And then the doorbell rang and said, Dr. Karioth, can I just come and stay for a little bit? Okay. Can I stay for the night? Okay. And so I love the fact that all of our instincts in times of events such as this are to be with other people. The idea of closeness becomes such an important thing. And if you looked at the vigil, a couple of thousand kids were there just to be there. I worked a little bit with the police department and said the only rule that I think you need to have is make it short so they can mill together and have that closeness. So kids coming and wanting to stay at a place with a person that they think will always keep them safe. Will never make decisions about, I don't know why you're upset. You weren't even on campus when this happened. Well, as you and I talked, you don't have to be on campus if your life is already a mess. This is just one more thing to make you tip over.
A lot of students and faculty and staff were impacted in a very terrifying way. You've got kids barricading themselves in classrooms. They're holding their breath, trying to not make any noise. What might that kind of experience do to any one of us?
Well, we'll have some flashback stuff. Oddly enough, at the beginning of every class, I still say to the kids in Sally Karioth Lecture Hall, should something happen, here is our route. And it's funny because last night in class, one of the kids said, isn't that crazy, Dr. Karioth? We had just rehearsed this. And so the long-term effects are often not long-term. For people with great support systems, which is really the number one phenomena associated with recovery from terror events. For a couple days, you'll be a little shaky. You feel a little uncomfortable coming on campus. And for the majority of our kids who are really exquisitely resilient, as I found out in class last night and talking to all of them, that will begin to fade. And I asked the kids 2 questions. Number 1, were you surprised it happened? And number 2, were you shocked? And the generalized response is, no, we're not surprised because it happens all the time. But we were so shocked that it was us. Mm-hmm. And that's really the truth. I have some of the kids do something called ritual leave taking. Draw me the picture that is most upsetting for you. Now we're going to burn that picture. And we're going to take those ashes and you are going to put them someplace where you don't have to deal with them anymore. It doesn't work with everyone, but the majority of people, they're already starting to look better by Easter when I was calling some of the police that I've been working with and some of the kids that I was most concerned about. They were off to church, or it was such a pretty day, they were going to walk in Cascades. All of those are indications they're willing to go outdoors. And that's a really great implication. If I've got a kid that's still inside with his door locked, those are the children we need to keep an eye on.
You brought a lot of papers with you, and I wonder if you'd be willing to describe some of this. I mean, obviously we want to keep privacy, but I'd just like to hear you describe some of what the kids came up with, especially what they learned about themselves from this.
Okay, for those of you listening, I teach my trauma class at 5 o'clock on Monday nights and sent out a note to students in general that anybody that wanted to could come to class. I've got a lot of extra spaces, and so we had dozens of extras. Well, I had 2 assignments for the kiddos. The first one says, draw you and your feelings as soon as you heard the news. And this is one of them. I was at home. Where is my brother? Where are my friends? What the blank bleep. After everything this year, now this.
Yeah.
Okay. So they do that. And most of these pictures are sad faces. Here's another one that says, today is going to be a long day. And then I have them draw their safe place. So on this one, because she keeps chickens, I have a picture of the chicken coop and the chickens.
Aww.
There's a lot of their own beds, interestingly enough, that's their safe place.
Yeah.
With her mama is one in a safe place. So you get the idea. So they did that, and at the bottom I had written on each of the pages, all of you are a joy. I will miss all of you and love you. So they need validation that things have happened. Here's the thing that I tell the students, and I'm telling all of you, The only thing you can do wrong when an event like this happens is to do nothing. You must validate it. You can't decide about how someone else is doing it. Grief and trauma is idiosyncratic. Everyone will respond differently, and you don't get to judge whether you think they're doing it right. So get over that.
And a lot of us, I think, a lot of people will feel like, well, life is just supposed to go on now, like nothing happened.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's crazy. So the second paper that I gave them is this. And the first question is, what did I learn about myself on Thursday? Here's an interesting one. How I have to not take life for granted.
Wow.
Then I asked them to list 5 things that make them happy. Being able to run, the circus, my girlfriend, playing Dungeons and Dragons, the gym, traveling to new places. And then I said, tell me what today's exquisite moment was. Now, I make the students do that in a journal anyway, every day that they're in class. So what's your exquisite moment? And this child said that I'm back in class.
Wow.
And this child said was seeing my friends on campus as though nothing had happened, except something had happened.
Yeah.
And getting stuff done with my teachers, that gave me an exquisite moment. And so this was really just debriefing stuff. I bought a stuffed animal for everybody in the class because, in fact, having something to hold and hug is not a bad thing. And then I watched as they all came in and sat down. I did enough for another 20 or 30 people thinking, I don't know how many are coming. And every single one picked up their little animal and either set it on their lap or put it under their arm or peeked it out of their purse. And so for people that thinking that this work is hard, this is not rocket science. What did Dr. Fauci say in COVID? I don't know how to tell you. You just have to take care of each other. That's what I'm telling people, that you just have to take care of each other.
You said that you felt like the students were different when they came out of that class than when they went in.
Yeah, consistently throughout the group. And just about they're talking among themselves. And the class is really close-knit. And there was a lot of hugging that went on. A few tears. They were just chatting about everyday stuff. What are you going to do when you go home? What are you going to do for the summer? It was the mundane that we often look for when the irregular has happened.
It's a good reminder that anyone who is sad, depressed, have just been through something terrible, isolation is not what you want.
No. Don't try and do it by yourself.
Yeah. So this is the second time such a thing has happened at FSU in just over a decade. It happened in late 2014 at Strozier Library. What is your advice for living in a world where this sort of thing can and does happen anywhere at any time?
Every day is such a gift, isn't it? We live in this world. This is how it works. Do I want you to be vigilant? Yes, but I want you to be happy. You don't have to have your head on a swivel. You just got to be aware. And then, as one of my students said, what her exquisite moment of the day was, that she woke up. And so my kids keep a journal in one of my classes, but I make them each day write down their exquisite moments so they remember to enjoy and celebrate those moments and be ready and aware that others can happen. I think today I sent them a little poem called Life is Amazing, where sometimes it's wonderful and sometimes it's scary and sometimes it's just boring. And so you celebrate the joy, you manage the scary, and you go through the everyday because that's the only options we have. There's no getting ready for this.
Yeah.
Whatever happened, happened. And so for all of you, stop finding the bad stuff. Anybody listening, I want you right now to do exactly what I made the kids do. Draw how you feel today and what the 5 favorite things are and what makes you happy and your exquisite moment for the day. I know that many of you come with lots of baggage. So you got to put a lot of those suitcases down, folks. If you were brave enough to live through it, you can talk about it, write it down, and celebrate your life. I watch students every single day in the face of profound adversity. I taught a couple other classes yesterday for other teachers, and one of the girls in the class, I had noticed when she walked in that there was probably something going on with her body. And she said, I've got one lung, I've got metastatic cancer, and I'm so, so excited that I'm here and that we're all together. That's how you put a great spin on a complex issue.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
FSU professor Dr. Sally Karioth, certified traumatologist known as Doc, and a wonderful person. Thank you so much.
Thanks for letting me come.
Just tuning in? You can now hear these conversations on Speaking Up, the podcast version, available on all platforms.